Okay, everyone, we are back again with another episode of Sunday Blessings, and I'm so excited to be here today to really give you another one of those real good boosts of encouragement. We have a fabulous guest on the show today, and I'm really excited to bring her on and really hear her story, her mission, the impact that she's making, and all of these good things. So I'm going to literally read out her profile, and you're going to be quite amazed because she really does have a profound story to share, a profound message. She's a believer, woman of God, making a big difference. So her name is called Melia Diana. I think that you have such a lovely name. So thank you so much for joining us. She basically is the podcast founder of a Christian podcast called The Vertical Relationship Show. It's an amazing show that helps thousands of women worldwide, or people in relationships worldwide that are Christian based, to really have powerful marriages, relationships, and everything like that. She's an award-winning relationship writer and also a dating coach, best-selling author, and a certified Christian biblical therapist. And she's really had a long-standing career in the fields of medical and fitness, and has been in that field for over 14 years. She has signature programs, courses, so many ways of helping people. Her mission is to help lost souls to receive authentic healing and deliverance, and to cultivate thriving relationships with others, herself, and most importantly with the Lord Jesus Christ. So, oh my goodness, all the way from the USA, we want to welcome Melia onto the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. You are so welcome. Oh my goodness. So I would love to hear just your way of introducing yourself in your own words, because obviously I've said what I've said, but how would you introduce yourself if you were to give us a mini introduction, and also if you were to describe yourself in 3 words?
3 words: daughter of Christ. Daughter of Christ, right? First and foremost, to me, obviously, we're all wives, we're mothers, we're out there, we're business women, entrepreneurs, but first of all, it's that relationship with Jesus, and that's what I'm all about, because it starts there. And without that, our horizontal relationships won't be right. So it all starts there, girl.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. Exactly. Okay. So tell us about you. Why did you decide to get into, like, basically your work in Christian ministry and being a Christian therapist, getting into biblical based teachings, and also just this whole concept of vertical relationships? How did it all come into being?
Yes. So I've been in the medical and fitness field for over 14 years and love doing what I'm doing, but I knew the Lord was calling me to something else for a long time. And I remember telling my husband, I'm like, something's just not right in my spirit. For a long time. I've been telling him, he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I love doing what I do, but I just, you like knew something else was going on. And God was stirring up my heart for many years. He had called me to write a book when I was stripped from everything, like finances, emotionally, physically, everything. And he had to kind of lay me on my feet to start this book. And I started being obedient and writing. And within that, that's when all that stuff started happening. But being in the physical therapy and fitness field, and I knew God was showing me, and like I knew it in my heart, he was telling me to leave, and I didn't want to, because I was fighting disability actually for my husband for 2 years for in the Marine Corps, for his back. And I just was like, I have to keep this family afloat. Like, what are we going to do? And then COVID happened, and we all know that happened. And even you could even like freak out about it or embrace it. And that's when God was really like, okay, now you're going to do what I'm calling you to do. Get this book out. And, that's when little by little, it wasn't all at first. It was, I became certified as a counselor, and I got another book out, and it was like, then the podcast, he showed me little by little, this is what you're going to do. So and it's still evolving. It's still evolving. I'm getting deeper into the inner healing and deliverance, which I'm already doing that. And I think that's how you reached out to me. You kind of found me. I think you found me on the podcast, right?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Which is amazing. And, that's what it's about. It's just being that light in the dark for people.
Amazing. And yes, so powerful, and just such a journey. And I think that something that I'm getting from this is, well, first and foremost, daughter of Christ, definitely being a daughter of the King is just a phenomenal thing. And just the fact that you were willing to take steps of obedience. I think sometimes, like you said, something just didn't feel right. And as much as you had a lot to really, you had every reason to stay committed to the career you had and everything that you were doing for the financial purposes to support your family and things like that. But when it came down to it, obedience was at the bottom of in the depths of your heart, and you couldn't resist it. So I do say, and now you're here at this point where you're helping like all these women, you're making a big impact. And so what would you say were the kind of the steps that you took to get yourself from where you were to where you are? So for example, did you have to how did you leave your job, or how did you begin writing your book and things like that, the steps you took?
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny. I wrote in my book, I used to love writing when I was a child. I actually went to college for it, but I wasn't saved. I wasn't walking with the Lord or anything. And it was like alienated topics that I just wasn't interested in. And I said, this isn't for me. So, God's like, no, it is for you, but I had to do some work within you.
Different way.
Yeah, right. He had to do a lot of inner work, inner healing. And so that started, it was like, it really never left me. And I take what I do now, the physical part of it, and that he wasn't wasted. Let's put it that. He takes that part and we put it into the program, because I work in all aspects, if it's spiritual, emotional, mentally, and physically, because I want to treat the body as a whole, just like Jesus does. Mind, body, spirit, right? So if we're just working on one aspect of it, like, what is that really doing for us? I mean, it helps, but it's not completing us. So I didn't take, I still, even though I'm like, oh, I miss it, because I love working with people and, being live, but really COVID made that very difficult, right? To go back into that. And then I was like, I'm like, do I want to be with patients right here and carry that home? And, it was just, I still love it, but I carry it into my programs, and if that opportunity where he wants me to be able to go back, I will. But he's got me deep in, girl. Like, I don't know.
Wow, amazing. So how do you help your clients? Tell us about your programs that you put out and your podcast, because you have this show called the Vertical Relationship Show. So tell us a bit about the programs that you've brought out to help your clients with their relationships, and then the podcast.
Yeah. So I started first with, because when I was called to serve, and I was like, oh, where do I start? You're like, what do you want me to do? So I lived, like you said, like I said, little steps. I actually hired a coach to kind of help me develop the programs, but I developed them with God. Like, I let God kind of say, okay, and it was like, it was coming back to me, like the journey that he took me back. And I always say, I have the ARC method in Christian counseling. We have to take accountability, responsibility, and commitment, because if we don't, I wasn't taking my relationship with God seriously when I first got saved. And I totally admit that. I'm like, it took me a second time to the altar. It took a very, very toxic relationship with a man to break it off and be like, okay, I can't blame all these guys. Like, what was going on inside me that I was saying, okay, or I was, saying, what was going on there? So I had to take accountability for myself. What was going on inside me that was okay for maybe him to go out and cheat, for him to go do this and do that. And I was saying, okay. So I had to break that relationship off, and it was very, very difficult, but it was the best thing I ever did. It was almost like a blessing and a curse, that relationship. It was like, because I had to go through that treacherous and break it off totally to get close to God again. And when I did that, and I said no more, and putting Jesus first, that's when everything starts lining up. So within that's when the Vertical Relationship Show, I kept hearing podcasts, and I was like, really? Like, I'm already doing this for you, God. You want me to do this now? Because with that, you have to learn all these techie things and learn all this and learn all that. And I was like, okay, here we go. So I actually took a course on that too, learned. But I take my content in my heart and I pray about what I want, what does he want me to teach? Because this is a platform, obviously, for free. I want people to understand that vertical relationship is utmost important. It really is there. And then all the aspects under that umbrella is the relationships with ourselves, which is important, our relationship with others, but ultimately with God, and he's our healer. So, it all starts there.
Amazing. Yes, exactly. He is our healer, and your story is so impactful, and it's so true. Sometimes we have to overcome or come out of something that is very toxic or very challenging, and then take those lessons and apply them to our lives. And I think the journey of just being able to come out of that and then now be able to help others with their relationships, and having the experience and knowing when something is toxic and how to help your clients to come out of that, and providing the resources and tools for them is just a really powerful thing. And I think it's so needed, especially in this season. I mean, I don't know if you know, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it all before, that there was a lot more domestic violence during the pandemic. A lot of the household issues began to increase and intensify, and so your work is very needed. So what would you say to someone, I guess, on that note? Like, what would you say to somebody that is in a toxic relationship and they are really struggling to come out? And sometimes they stay in it for years. It could be years, sometimes it's months. What would you say that they need to begin to really start working on to take steps towards being able to come out of that, and then begin to position themselves to work on self-care and work on healing their trauma?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, years. Yeah, it was 2 years. And listen, I got a lot of good relationships, but they weren't godly relationships either, right? First of all, if I want to say, if somebody is if they're physically abused, like, definitely need to step away from that for sure. Get the help that you need. There's domestic violence. But when it comes to the narcissist, the emotional, the verbal, a lot of this stuff that we don't think is abusive, but it is abusive. You really have to step back and work on yourself. And even when I start working with a client, and the dating client, right? And, I have people, and I said, we need to concentrate on you and your relationship with God, because if you're not right, you have to be right before you can make anybody else happy. Like, you have to be happy with yourself first before going into it. I think a lot of us go into that relationships thinking they're going to make me happy. My husband's going to make me happy, and that's not their responsibility. That's between you and God. So I think when you could grasp that, and it does take work, and that's what I'm finding a lot of people don't want to put in the work. They don't want to go through that pain, but I'm saying you have to go to that pain. You have to go backwards in order to go forwards. And that's why I go back to childhood wounds and teach about the brain and trauma in the brain, what got stuck there. Let's find out what that root is so we can deal with it. Because once you know what it is, you could actually understand it and know, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy, right?
There's something to work through. Yes, there's something actually that happened.
Right. Right. And it's not just one thing. And that's what it's usually a blend of all these things. And that's where the Holy Spirit comes in. I can't do that without him. God's part of my business.
Yes.
And I can't do without him. So.
Wow, exactly. Okay. So how would you, what would you say is your process in terms of allowing the Lord to lead you when you are counseling your clients? Because like you said, we have the mind, the body, and the spirit. So all the mind, body, and soul. So we have that tripart being, and we, sometimes we think we need to work on the physical side, but it's really the spiritual side. Sometimes it's and even the finances. There's just so much that it's for the complex beings. And I think sometimes we can say to somebody, oh, you need to do this, and these are the steps to take. And you might notice that they're not doing it. For some reason, they're not taking the action, or they're not getting the results. And then you think, oh, something's going on here. And it's almost like, do you turn? So the question is, I guess I'll say, is, would you turn to the Holy Spirit at that point? Or does he bring up things in your spirit? Or do you ask them? And so how do you work around this to be able to really maximize the Lord in the situation of therapy?
I could honestly tell you I have a really keen gift of discernment. And before I even, really walked with God, I had this ability, but I wasn't utilizing it properly. I could pick up stuff. I could tell, somebody was hurting, just seeing them or looking at them. And so I have to be very careful with laying my hands on people and stuff like that, and be very, very, I just have to be really, really careful. But that's it. I give God my time. It's not like, oh, I just hear from him and, he's giving me a prophetic gift and I'm blessed for that. But I work on my relationship with God. I spend time with him in the morning. I'm studying my Bible, the areas that he's wanting me. I'm doing spiritual warfare, a series, and I've never really done a series. And he's like, you need to teach this. And I'm like, okay, and I'll spend hours digging in and studying to do a very short episode to make it powerful and punch. because I want to help, and there's a lot of false prophecy out there too, and false teachers. And we have to be really careful what we're allowing in our spirit and who we're following and who we're listening to. And it's just all wrapped up. It's all wrapped up in this package,
Exactly. Wow. Very, very true. Definitely. So that is so, so powerful. And what would you say your favorite scriptures that you've been able to really stand on? Your favorite, like 2 or 3 scriptures that have just been like gold to you on your journey of faith and all of the things that you've been through on your journey?
I could tell you the past year and a half, the Lord has given me, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. There's so many of them. Proverbs 3:5-6 has been, a blessing for me. It seems to be every season, it's maybe a little bit different, but I could tell you that be strong, courageous has been very meaningful to me. Don't be afraid. And I'm understanding, okay, like he's like, I'm calling you, don't be afraid, because there's going to be attacks. There's going to be people that don't accept it and don't. And that's part of being a disciple, is it's not popular, right? And I'm okay with that. I might not have a million followers, but hey, I have the heart, and that's what Jesus is looking for.
Yeah, like you said, there'll be challenges, and the word is to encourage us to keep going and motivate us, or just give us that boost of encouragement. So when we don't feel like we can do it, the Lord is always saying, keep going, keep going. Like Elijah, that time when he was just wanting to just give up, and he was just like, he wants to die. And then it was almost like, the Lord sent an angel, and then the angel's like, eat this, and then, sleep, and then he fell asleep, and then he's like, eat this again, and then it was like, go on your journey. you have a way to go. So sometimes we think that when we say to the Lord that we're tired or we're weary or want to give up, sometimes we think that I've noticed there are 2 things that go on. So I've sometimes noticed that it actually does completely shift at that point. It's like, oh, I was at the point of breakthrough. You did lift it. So this must have meant that my breakthrough time had come. So sometimes it's been like that. And sometimes, so I've gone into the promised land, basically. Or sometimes it's a situation where he just strengthens us. And then it's like we continue and keep persevering based on the word of God, his encouraging scriptures that we were able to meditate on, or just being in his presence, or whatever it would be.
Yeah. And might add too, is like just the enemy's attacks. Like when you're on a mission in God, I've had all kinds of attacks in any way. It's been crazy, and that doesn't scare me, because I'm like, oh, you think you're going to win? Like, no, you don't know who you're messing with. So I think that even feeds me more. And of course it hurts, and it's very dreary, and it can be very lonely too. But even when I'm feeling like that, like God will, even like you sent me a message, and it was out of the blue. He'll send these people out, if it's from my podcast, or if it's from my book, and how somebody had helped them, or they saw something, and that blesses me, and that keeps me going too.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like the Lord always knows how to make us know that we're not alone, or that we're not off. Like, sometimes you might be doing all this great work and you think, does anyone even really care?
Exactly.
Is it
even here? Yeah.
Exactly. And then you get that client that just signs up, or that person that just says, wow, this is the best thing ever. And even just today, for example, someone reached out to me and they were like, oh, can I interview you on your topic of this break? Because I've been talking about the breakout year. And basically they were like, can you come on my show, or come on my sort of like platform, and talk about how to have this year of the breakout year, and talk about how they can prepare for it and everything. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like what you're saying, you just think that no one's really paying attention, and then it's like someone's like, I want to interview you on this, so come and talk on my platform. And so the Lord has always given us signs and encouragement, dreams and scriptures, and sometimes it's just the actual his presence. Sometimes it's just his presence is enough.
Yes. And I love that, because it's not always help through other people, but obviously through the word. That's why you're in the Bible. But he speaks through me through just an animal too, or just like, if we have these blue jays that come in, they're so beautiful, like butterflies in our backyard. And my husband and I go bananas over them now because they're so meaningful. Like, we're just like, oh, this is so awesome. It's just like God's presence. But not even that. I just spoke on my podcast episode that God spoke to me through a Doritos bag. Like,
wow.
yeah, like, are you kidding me? Like, t-shirts. But again, you have to have those spiritual eyes and ears to be open to allow to see that stuff. We
Yeah.
live in such a noisy world where if we don't step back and get quiet and get on that spiritual realm with him, because we live, we don't, a lot of people don't live in that spiritual realm. We're so busy. Like, we have to do this, we have to do that. And it's like, he's like, no, you just have to spend time with me and I'll show you.
Yeah, exactly. I remember a time, and this is the thing as well. Like, I think sometimes I used to think that because I started to be like, oh, I want to practice seeing and just really want to spend time and just like, Lord, show me what you want to show me. And I think I thought that it would be always a spiritual thing. So it would be like, maybe he'll show me this, some like the spiritual realm or something. And obviously the Lord does do that, but he can do that. He does do that in our lives. And he will always do, give us visions or dreams or whatever it would be, if we're willing, if we're open. Or if we're called to have these gifts. But he was like, look actually in the room, look at what's next to you. So it would be things like, oh, there are a pair of, shoes there, or and then it's almost like he would give a message based on a pair, like, 2 is this, or whatever it would be. Or sometimes, like recently, I've been paying more attention to what I'm seeing as I'm going, like maybe on the way home from church. And so I'm looking at like, what am I actually seeing? What am I noticing? Like this car, it says, Gigi, for example, or I've noticed that maybe there's a word and the word says, it could be slow down or something like that, or it could be the amber lights. I'm noticing amber lights, and we will notice things a little bit more with certain words or certain numbers or whatever it is. And I think I now have started to write some of this down, like even if it's just 3 or 4, and just put it there. Because that to me is the Lord speaking, and then I can be like, hey, Lord, what did you mean about the number 96, or what did you mean when I saw, for example, slow down or fast cash or whatever it is? Because typically there are little meanings, and that's why, if we think about it, that's why people do end up having, if we look at it in the negative sense, like maybe an accident or an incident, sometimes it's they've been having the signs. God has been showing them, slow down, or whether it's speed up. I've even been told once when I was driving, you're driving too slow. Let's move. Let's get this moving. So it's not always that we need to slow down. Sometimes we need to speed up. And so we just need to be paying attention and not think God is not speaking. He will speak to us in different ways if we're willing.
Absolutely. I love that, because he does speak to me in the car a lot. So when I'm alone in the car, and it's not even, if it could be even just a song coming on, or just like something through the song. But like you said, he'll like a sticker, like blessed, God is here, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's like, thank you. And I get, I'm crying in the car. People are like, what, this chick's crazy. Because it moves you, and I'm sure it does you. And he does what he wants to in life, like you said, if our eyes and ears are open. I mean, he's constantly speaking.
He is. I mean, it's so funny. The other day, I'll just give you one little, just in line with what you said. I remember just getting this message on my phone, and that it was just a bit like almost about to be upset. But at the exact same time, my mother came to me, and she was like, "Oh, there's a gift that someone has bought for you." And then on the gift, though, it had the words, "God's got you." And so it came at the right moment. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's almost like the minute I got that message, the minute I got that gift, and it was like, I was like, this just is just, so that immediate hope and encouragement right at that moment. So sometimes that's what God does. He just, while we get if it is something that, like, maybe you open your letter and it's something you're like, oh my goodness, it was a new bill or whatever it is, that could throw you off. He also does something at the same time, or sometimes he gives you a dream before it even happens. And you're like, oh my goodness, I've already dreamt this. And then he shares with you what to do when it happens. And then it all is all smooth in the end,
Yeah. And I think that's where we can get ourselves into trouble of the waiting, because he's already shown me stuff ahead of time too. And I'm like, let's do it. I'm like, I'm ready.
We think it's going to happen like tomorrow or next week. We don't realize sometimes
it's
months, sometimes weeks or months, or sometimes even a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yes. So what would you say to anyone that would like to consider working with you, and where can they find you if they would like to invest in working with you or follow your journey through social media, the podcast and everything, where can they find you?
I make it super easy for everybody. It's just my name. Just go to meliadiana.com. And the podcast is there. The courses are there. There's little shop items. Everything's there. Yeah. So,
brilliant.
All there.
MeliaDiana.com. That is where you can find everything. Yeah, that is so good. What would you say your final words to anyone here, like listening on Sunday Blessings? What blessing would you like to wish everybody for 2022 if you were to pronounce or declare a prophetic blessing over the audience? What would you like to say to them as well?
Yes, God gave me, I just launched this today, so it's perfect timing. New level. That was the Doritos bag thing that he showed me. Through all these things, that's the word. I think everybody's word of the year is a little bit different, but God wants you to be on another level with him. And don't think that because you don't hear from him or it's not on your timing, he's there. And like you said, all he wants is our time and our heart, and just really start spending time with him and giving him your heart. And I promise, like, he'll start showing you and start showing up. And it's just, don't give up. Don't give up.
Amazing. Yes. Oh my gosh, I've loved this. We could just like do this all day. Like, I could just keep talking and asking you all these questions because you've got so much wisdom and so much knowledge to share. And your show is really interesting. And it's so funny because think about it. I think there are at least 1 million shows on Apple Podcasts, and I found yours. So that just shows you that, there can be millions out there of anything. And we have connected in this world where there are, 7 billion people in the earth, and we're here connected. So it's all divine. It's all
divine connections. Yes.
Yes, I believe in that. So thank you so much for being on the Sunday Blessings show. It's been such a pleasure to have you on this show today. Make sure you do follow Melia Diana on Instagram. Check out her Facebook group and everything. We'll put some details on the screen, or it'll be below. So make sure you do, above. Make sure you do follow her. Check out her website, and be sure to connect with her. And check out the podcast, the Vertical Relationship Show, on Apple Podcasts and other podcast platforms. So thank you so much for being with us on Sunday Blessings. We wish you more blessings for the week ahead. And definitely continue to build your faith with the Lord, because it is something that will reward you. You will see the rewards. The Lord will never fail you. So thank you all, and God bless. Bye.